started the recording. Do you see?
Yep, 8 seconds ago.
You see it going? All right. Okay, perfect. Oh, so she can't do any more of these hats.
Not unless she can find more of the towels from people.
Oh.
So we'll see, yeah.
Yeah. I think more people ask me about this hat than anything else at the Okinawan
Oh,
Festival.
yeah?
So many people ask me about the hat.
Yep. So I wear mine a lot to flaunt it.
Yeah, so actually, if people are interested, what was the name of that vendor again?
Joy Labrador.
Joy Labrador.
Ishikawa.
Oh, okay. Does she have like a website or something, or how does she?
No.
No?
You have to just go to craft fairs.
Craft fairs. Is she just at the Okinawan Festival and is she at the winter one too?
She wasn't at the winter. I'm not sure. If she tells me she's ready, I have a way to reach her and I can post stuff.
Okay. Okay.
Actually, when we posted the hats on Okinawan Festival's Instagram, and I told her it went crazy, just be prepared. She was actually really shocked.
Oh yeah. Yeah, she
Yeah.
should. I guess the Odeon one, people resonate with that, right? I mean, she could easily do something else. I guess in that vein,
She has to find the right towel designs, I think.
Yeah.
So people, if they have their own towels, can take it to her and she'll make a hat.
Oh, yeah, that's perfect. Is her contact? Where's her contact info? Is it on the Okinawan Festival website? Do you know?
No, I have her email, but she's not very tech savvy. So I'd have to ask her.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I guess maybe, just where did you want to start? I guess maybe start from where your ancestors from. I guess primarily on your Okinawan side, but you can talk about both.
So I'm half Okinawan. My mother's side is from Hiroshima, the Tsunahara clan. My dad is Itoman, specifically Meizato. That's the old way of saying it. Now I think they say Meizato, but my cousins all say Meizato, so I'm going to say Meizato. So I do have family living in Meizato, Itoman. They're the keepers of the relics for East Side. So like the shishi and the sacred objects for Tsunahiki, they hold on to it. I was able to experience 2 of the Meizato Tsunahiki with East Side. That was amazing. Meizato Tsunahiki, if you've never heard of it, is super famous for being very uncompromisingly traditional. I mean, women are not allowed to touch the stick that connects the 2 ropes. They're not allowed to touch the shishi or perform shishimai.
So that Tsunahiki thing, is that the tug-of-war?
Yeah.
Or like, oh, okay. Yeah, I heard that's like the biggest festival, right?
Well, there's the Naha Tsunahiki, which I personally think is very touristy.
Oh, it is.
If there is a chance to, so Itoman City has their own Tsunahiki. A lot of different areas have their own tug-of-war. It was tied into harvest. Cynically, I was told the nobles or the rich landlords kind of created it to encourage the farmers and the peasants to be excited about the harvest. But it's taken on a lot of different meanings. Like in Meizato, it's like a competition between East against West. In Itoman City, it's a competition North against South, farmers and fishermen against nobles. So it's like every area, I think, has their own story, which is kind of cool, yeah. So I think it makes sense. Like, definitely experience the Naha Tsunahiki. It is a huge spectacle. But if there's a chance to go look at the regional ones, I found those way more educational, or I connected a lot better with it.
Yeah. So what were you saying about very traditional? You said the women weren't allowed to touch.
Oh, women cannot touch the lion costume. They cannot perform in it. They hold to the traditions very strongly. Outsiders cannot participate in the tug-of-war. It's not a tourist thing for them. I could only participate because I'm descended from Meizato. But if I wasn't, then I would not be able to take part. So it's very famous in Okinawa because of that. They cleave to the traditions very strongly.
So what generation are you, and how did you connect with those relatives in Okinawa?
So I'm 3.5 because my mom is Japanese. Her family came earlier, yeah? So my grandfather was actually a Nifē, which makes me fourth gen on the Japanese side, but third gen on the Okinawan side because Okinawans came so much later, right? In 1900. I actually didn't grow up Okinawan, knowing the Okinawan community. So the Okinawan clan club that my family was in was called Takamine, which is an area of Itoman, which Meizato is a part of. And you know how it is, right? Where no one wants to be president of some of these clubs.
Hmm.
And so it disbanded when I was in elementary school. And so none of us joined Itoman. Oh, we didn't know we were part of Itoman. So we were not involved in the Okinawan community until my dad was headhunted by HUOA because he was an engineer with the city and they wanted his help when they were building the Hawaii Okinawa Center.
Oh, when was that?
I don't know when my dad was president. That's a good question. But he got recruited to join Wahewa Kyoyukai. So Wahewa is one of the ones that is not based on where your family came. It's based on like if you grew up in Wahewa or Mililani or
Uh-huh.
the surrounding areas. But yeah, you would think it would come up in a fast Google search when my father was president. It was a long time ago, though.
Yeah, because actually growing up as a kid, I don't think the Okinawa Center was there, when because I grew up in Pro City, but
Mm.
yeah, I don't think it was there when I was there. Yeah. So it must be like, I don't know, 20 years, 20 years
Well,
ago.
my father just got involved again in Okinawan clubs in that time when they were trying to build it. Yeah,
So what did you know up to that point, I guess, about your Okinawan background?
pretty much nothing.
Yeah.
It was one of those things that was really confusing. Why did the Okinawan grandparents speak in a language I didn't understand? Or actually, no, rephrase that. So I did learn stuff from both sides, but I didn't know they were different.
Hmm.
So Japanese language school was a mess, yeah, because I didn't know some words were Japanese and some were Okinawan.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but you know, my connection, and I'm gonna say this is I think everyone has their own journey on finding their way to connecting to their Okinawan roots. Mine was history and my father. At the university, we had a huge project documenting the stories and telling the stories of Japanese Americans who fought in World War II from Hawaii. And one of the people interviewed was Takejiro Higa, who was with the Military Intelligence Service,
Mhm.
that he was there for the Battle of Okinawa.
Mm.
And it let me do a lot of research on the Battle of Okinawa and what Takejiro Higa's story. Are you familiar with his story?
No.
He was born in, let's see if I'm getting this right. He was born in Okinawa and then sent to Hawaii. And then eventually went back to Okinawa. And he managed to come back before Pearl Harbor attack. And so he ended up joining the Military Intelligence Service. And he was recruited to be part of the crew. There was actually a team that they looked at all the last names, and all of the MIS who had Okinawan last names were pulled to be sent to Okinawa because they knew the language was different. So he
Mhm.
was one of the guys who was calling civilians out of the caves to surrender. But because he was
Oh.
speaking the Okinawan language
Uh-huh.
and because he grew up in Okinawa for a majority of his life, he could reference a lot of things. So he is credited with saving a lot of lives.
Okay. Yeah, I think I have heard that
Yeah,
story.
his
Yeah.
story is incredibly famous.
Hmm.
And when my dad became president elect of HUOA, the Hawaii United Okinawa Association, he took on a project to kind of create financial security or stability for the HUOA. He wanted it to be stable for decades or generations. And he developed the Hawaii Okinawa Plaza project. Are you familiar with that?
Oh, is that the same thing as the Okinawa Center, or is that different?
No. So when the Okinawa Center was built, the idea was that they would build like a legacy ballroom, and renting out the ballroom would create revenue that could sustain, the building. But it's not enough money. And the financial reports at that time were saying that if nothing substantial was done, like a capital campaign project, HUA would be in great difficulties because they were asset rich. They owned the property and the building, but cash poor. They have investments in stocks, but they are completely reliant on money donated every year. And if you look at generations, what the Issei and Nisei have donated in cash, or yeah, is nothing compared to it. Dwindles each subsequent generation, and it's not something that they could sustain. So my father led for 11 years, he oversaw the project to acquire the property across the street from the Okinawa Center at a low interest loan from the USDA, and to develop it to create a business center, the Hawaii Okinawa Plaza, so that it would be rented out to businesses and there would be a stable source of income that could support the Hawaii Okinawa Center, so that they're
Oh,
not completely reliant on donations from people, right? Or if there's a recession or other problems. And if there is like a super big problem, they have another asset. They could sell the building. They won't have to sell the Hawaii Okinawa Center. A project like that in a community type nonprofit organization, it had a lot of people that were very much against the risk it represented.
hmm.
And I saw how much stress that was putting on my father. He basically took on a full time job when he retired because he said it was so important to him that the organization had that stability. And that's what he wanted his legacy to be. But, when you have a lot of loud negative voices, it kind of drags you down, right? So I saw it take a toll on his health and all that kind of stuff. So that's actually when I stepped in and got involved with HUA. I'm more of a historian, or, more of an academic in that sense. And I'd never really been involved with the association. But in this case, any Shininkai that I could get to, I forgot how much I did over the next couple of years, but I just invoked the story of the pigs, reminding people that when we unite and work together, we can accomplish amazing things like what was done post-war by the Hawaii Okinawan community. But divided, we accomplish nothing, right? But, I could be my dad's pit bull to say, look, if we do nothing and we ignore this, we don't come up with a solution, then we could end up losing the Okinawa Center. We could end up losing the gathering place that kind of pulls together a lot of the activities, right? And so we have to be realistic and focus. And I say, you don't have to support the project, but don't sabotage it, right? Let's do
Hmm.
what we can to, continue the legacy of the post World War II generation that just did amazing things with helping Okinawa out, with the group that built the Okinawa Center. And that was really good because you just meet a huge range of people in that sense, right? But, for me, it was just trying to support my dad with this huge project that he had taken on to make sure that he had the support he needed.
But you said
And that's
your dad was an engineer?
civil engineer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was pretty high up with the city. So this is
Ah.
stuff that he did for the city, acquire property, develop it. But
Oh,
with
so
the city,
he had that background a little bit.
yeah. Well, the story of the plaza is really interesting because when the property went up for sale, Maurice Yamasato, the architect that designed the Hawaii Okinawa Center, and Randy Kuba, a realtor, they had intended at first to just acquire the property because they could have made a huge profit off of it, by flipping or developing it.
Hmm.
And they said, you know what, let's talk to George because they knew he wanted to do something to deal with the problems, the money problem. And so they gave up that chance to make a big killing with that property. And, Zippies wanted to acquire the property and use it maybe for their catering. And my dad went to the head of Zippy's at that time, and he explained what they wanted to do, and he backed off. He said, you know what, this is important. I'm backing off. So there's like as much negative people that were there. There were like so many amazing people who, Yui Maru, it was just like, let's help each other. Let's not make it about profit or credit. Because my dad never really cared about getting credit for being the one that pushes it. Mm-hmm. He just said, let's just do it, which I think is amazing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing how everything turned out, you know?
Well, I mean, to dedicate 11 years of your life.
It took 11 years to get the project going.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep. Because with the city, funding is already there. You know, he's working with the team. This was different. This is a community organization that had a lot of doubts and a lot of concerns. But yeah, I think that's, you think of individuals who step up when needed. You know, there are a lot of elders, especially from the Nifē generation, that really, they could moderate. You know, they did things because they did it in the best interest of the community, which I thought was amazing. And I think of my dad like that, right? He stepped up when it was needed, and he did what needed to be done. And my poor mom lost her dining room table for like about 10 years because he used that to spread out all his papers, you know, on the table. Because my dad is not the computer generation.
Yeah, I can imagine. So I guess that's a good kind of transition to like Zippy's also. So like Zippy's, the owners of Zippy's are Okinawan?
Currently, Zippy's is a corporation, though. Mm-hmm. So the family still runs it, but they set it up as a corporation, not as a family business anymore.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, because I think, how is Zippy's involved with the Okinawan Festival? What do they do again? They're
a sponsor.
Oh, okay.
I'm not exactly clear if they donate some of the food. Okinawan Festival is unique in that majority of the food is prepared by volunteers. They do purchase prepared items from Zippy's, you know, like their chili or their shoyu pork, but it's volunteer teams that will put it together to make the oki dog, or who will use the shoyu pork to kind of like, or just the pieces that we buy. I'm not sure if Zippy's donates or gives a discount, but for like the month before festival, they have a shoyu pork special that they run, where for every shoyu pork you buy on special, they give like a percentage of it to HUOA.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe we can talk about, I guess, your Feastival site.
Before we talk about Feastival, I want to talk about the Hawaii Okinawa Restaurant Project.
Oh, was that, what is that?
So, you know, there have been over 350 historic restaurants owned by Okinawans in Hawaii. The reason we know this is because the last owner of Columbia Inn, Gene Kaneshiro, and a guy whose parents own Yuki's Cafe, Howard Takara, they...
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that's the article that you were in the Hawaiian Airlines magazine recently.
Martha did a good job.
She did a super good job. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that she told the story, and I love that when they told her to cover something about 125 years of Okinawans in Hawaii, she chose food. The thing is, there was a guy who, I want to say 1932. What's important about this story is that so when Okinawans came over and their contract with the plantation was done, you know, banks wouldn't make loans to non-whites. And you saw these Okinawans finish up their time on the plantation and not a lot of ways to advance. Yeah. And so there was this guy named Ushi Takara that came over from Oroku, Okinawa, worked on the plantation on one of the neighbor islands, and he wanted to advance. So he started washing dishes and scrubbing potatoes at a restaurant for no pay, but he got 2 meals a day, and he watched and he learned, and he worked his way into paying positions. When he felt he was ready, he did a Okinawan style Tanamoshi, the Japanese lending system.
Hmm.
And he opened up American Cafe in, I want to say, 1923. And he consciously made the decision he wasn't going to sell Okinawan or Japanese food, because why would you go out to eat and pay for food that you can cook at home? He
Hmm.
wanted it to be special, so it was, I'm making air quotes, American food. Lamb with mint jelly, steak, mock turtle soup. There were tablecloths on the table, and, you know, it was fancy. And he made an offer to people from his village: wash dishes, scrub potatoes, or work your way up, and we will. And he helped them open up their own restaurant, not a franchise, open their own restaurant on their own. So because of Ushitakara, Oroku Village had 75 restaurants that were Oroku-owned in Honolulu. Times Grill became Times Supermarket. You have Columbia Inn, one of the most famous Hawaii restaurants, historic restaurants. And it wasn't just Oroku. Other clans were doing the same thing. That's why you saw so many restaurants popping up.
Hmm.
And, Jin Kaneshiro always says they didn't see themselves as being in competition with each other. It was more just a competition to get people to come eat and survive. And he said they helped each other out. If Columbia Inn ran out of beer on a Friday night, he could call Wisteria and say, "Can I buy a case of Bud?" And the answer wasn't just yes, it was, "Do you want me to bring it by?" If one restaurant needed a new head cook, one of the other restaurants would say, "Hey, I have a really promising assistant cook. Good opportunity." So, there was never a thought, "Oh, now I'm going to be inconvenienced because I have to find a new assistant cook." It was just, this is a great opportunity for the assistant cook to become a head cook. So I'm
Hmm.
going to give it to him. And I think what blows me away with all these stories is how much caring there was. Like, just genuine, let's help each other out. No ulterior motive, no need for reward or gain. It was good opportunity, go do it. Ushitakara could have been incredibly rich, right? If he had franchised or controlled things, but it was no, no, no. Go and open your own restaurant and make a living and become a success, right?
Hmm.
The story I always tell, which I think is the strongest example of all of this, is the founder of Aloha Tofu was a cook for Times Grill. Times Grill shuts down to become Times Supermarket, and they send him to get trained to be a butcher. So he moves over to Times Supermarket as a butcher. Eventually, he is able to open up his own tofu factory. He purchases a tofu factory. Times Supermarket was Aloha Tofu's first and most loyal customer.
Mm.
Back then, it wasn't a thing to sell tofu at a supermarket. It was kind of like through those like vendors that would go house to house, and the two of them expanded and grew together. So shortly after opening, there's a fire that burns down the first. Actually, I shouldn't say shortly, but after opening, there's a fire that burns down the first factory. And the founder was going to give up, but he had equipment coming in from Japan. So he decided he'd give it one last shot. In the year it took to completely rebuild and set up the new factory, their competitor, Aala Tofu, let them use their factory after hours to fill their orders so they could stay afloat.
They were also Okinawan?
Married by marriage, yes.
Uh, oh, okay.
And, the thing is, these are incredible stories, and we have them because Howard and Jean spent about 10 years. They gathered all the restaurant owners together. They wanted to make a spreadsheet. So they have the most complete documentation of the 75 Oroku restaurants. And then they decided, you know what, let's get the rest. And even they didn't realize how many there were. And the number they collected, as I said, is over 350. It is very Oahu centric. So maybe there's gaps on the neighbor islands. But, my thinking on that is people on the neighbor island, Okinawans on the neighbor islands, got to step up because they
Mm.
need to be the ones kind of
Mm.
pushing the finding out all this information. And,
Mm.
like,
Mm.
so Gene just, he is this wealth of knowledge of stories of the restaurateurs and restaurant life. But what I really respect about Howard is he followed up, double checked the information. Someone said, "Hey, I heard this restaurant was Okinawan owned." he didn't just take that at face value. He actually researched, confirmed, made sure. And this is all stuff they're doing on their own time. This was something they just felt was important. And I met them because, they're in their late 80s. It's a concern what happens. And so I'm taking over the project for them in the sense that, I could digitize it and eventually the list will go online, refine it. We can use social media. We can use other platforms to kind of share more information. And, so exhibits went up at City Hall, Honolulu Hale, and at one of the Okinawan festivals in my learning room. And people kept asking, what are the currently open Okinawan-owned restaurants that exist today? And this was pre-COVID. And I thought that was an interesting question. So I started tracking down that information. And what really shocked me was how many food-related businesses are Okinawan-owned. Aloha Tofu, Okuhara Kamaboko Factory, Tamashiro Fish Market, Higa Meat, 50th State Poultry, Two Lady Farmers, Sun Noodle, King's Hawaiian. Those are some of the major food players, yeah? And then, they sold it, but Armstrong Produce used to be Okinawan-owned. And so I just decided it's significant enough that they got added to the list as well. So, the irony of what I was telling you about how the first restaurant was American food, what we had 3 restaurants that I called the big 3, Sunrise, Hide-chan, and Utage. They specialized in home cooking, Okinawan home-style cooking or home-style dishes. Because, and, for me personally, I don't have grandma that can make those dishes, and I never learned. My mom is Japanese, so she never learned either, right?
So is Hide-chan still around?
No, Hide-chan closed after the pandemic. But he was a victim of the landlord jacking up the rent. And, his daughter just said, hey, why don't you guys retire? It's my turn to support you. And, then you can raise your grandkids. But, it's just the irony of now we have to pay to have home cooking, Okinawan style home cooking. And, Hide-chan is interesting because actually Hide-chan, Chokatsu, the owner of Sunrise, and the guy who founded Mr. Oji-san, they all worked together at a famous Japanese restaurant. I want to say the name was Sada's. Chokatsu was the sushi chef. Hide-chan and the other guy, I think, were the cooks. And when Hide-chan opened up, there were no Okinawan dishes on his menu because he didn't think people would order. And he only added it in because his regulars who were Okinawan kept asking him, can you add in Goya champuru? We really want, pig feet soup. We want this and that. And so at the end, I would say maybe 1/3 of his menu was Okinawan, and they were the most popular. You have Utage, which is probably they have a next generation that's going to take over. Hers is pretty extensive, but, she worries most about her customers who are older. So her champurus are not stir-fried. They're simmered because she doesn't want it oily. So all of them are very different. Like Sunrise was opened up by Katsu and his auntie Kyo, where he was doing sushi and she made the Okinawan dishes. And, the thing with Sunrise is Chokatsu's turning 70 this week and no next generation to take over. So it's one of those things we're not going to have forever. They did sign a new lease. So we do have them maybe for another 4 years. And that's the thing. It's just I get really, 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 I'm going to add a lot of really's frustrated when I see huge lines at Chick-fil-A or, and it's one of those. So pandemic hits, right? And all of a sudden, restaurants are ordered to only do takeout. And, Chokatsu told me that in the 6 hours after he had to do the switchover, he only had one order and he was terrified. And I was worried about them and Hide-chan the most because they're older. They don't have social media. They don't have ways of communicating. You know, they had older customers that probably wouldn't be coming by even for takeout. And the wake-up call was Like Like Drive-In closing. They closed pretty early on. And they're one of the Okinawan-owned OG ones. And they said we didn't get the support we needed when we switched over to takeout. And so we had to close. And that was a wake-up call for me because it's like saying, hey, if we don't do something as a community and they close, that's on us. And so I already had the list. So this was a partnership with HUOA. I'm very active with HUOA, but I like working with them as a partner, not under them, if that makes sense. HUOA has a lot of red tape or bureaucracy. So sometimes things can take a long time, or they just have to maybe be concerned about large scale things. Like when Sunrise was in trouble, I didn't ask them for help because I knew the lawyers would be saying, well, if you help one of the restaurants, you have to help every restaurant that asks for help. And I get where they're coming from with that talk, but I rather be outside so that I can help when help is needed, right? Without being fettered by this concerns about how it will snowball in the future. But they are hosting the website, HawaiiOkinawans.com, which I really appreciate. And that site actually has the list of which places have Okinawan dishes on their regular menu. And it's broken down by what dishes there are. And I try and note which ones are unique to that restaurant. So like Utage is the only one that makes nabera champuru. You know, Sunrise was the only one making yakisoba or having Okinawan tempura.
Yeah. Well, let's circle back to the what you call it, the Sunrise thing. Like, how did you meet? What is the owner's name again?
Chokatsu and Tomoko Tamayose.
Yeah. How did you meet them? Because, and maybe you can tell a little bit about your story, because because I never heard about that story too until I read the article in the Hawaiian Airlines paper. You know, the magazine.
You know, Sunrise has a really, really special place in my heart because, you know, a lot of people kind of hang out in their circles. So whatever your club is or whatever your affiliation is, like in the arts or, you know, the sports organizations and things like that, you don't see a lot of overlap between. But to me, Sunrise is a gathering place where it's like Cheers. Chokatsu is at his sushi counter. And actually, when I started going, I was introduced to him as George Tamashiro's daughter. And he would constantly be introducing me to whoever was there. Hey, this George Tamashiro's daughter, you know, the HUOA president. And that's where I met this like wide range of people in the community. And it's been really fun where like, I think I went in to eat one night and he's like, hey, Shari, this lady, she's an editor of a famous magazine in Okinawa, Momoto. You help her, okay? I'm like, okay. And Shizu is now one of my, you know, dearest friends who we've just done amazing projects together, right? That's never happened to me at any other restaurant. You know, I mean, I've heard him yell across, sorry, Mitchell. Hey, Mitchell, you still single, yeah? This lady over here, she's visiting from Okinawa. She's single too. Give her your number. And, you know, he made Mitchell give the number and agree to take her, use his extra ticket to the Keizu karaoke competition. And I've never experienced that anywhere else, where you just have this crazy random encounters and connections. And a lot of people do end up becoming like family. I was there with a coworker and we're chatting with the guy at the next table. I forgot his name, but he's a karate sensei. Turns out they're distantly related and hadn't seen each other in decades, but we figured it out, right? I mean, that stuff only really happened to me at Sunrise, sometimes at Hide-chan. And I think it's such a wonderful place for the community to have. You know, this place that we can just meet up and gather. And Chokatsu loves music. So a lot of musicians from Okinawa will come. And so like Johnny Ginawan just ended up there one night and he starts performing. So there's always music there as well, and dancing. We'll tie toilet paper around their heads and dance kachashi just cuz. But it's that thing of I think it's a dying breed kind of restaurant, the mom and pop.
Hmm.
You know, Shokatsu always says everything for the customer. For them, they're always, like it's so great because they're always looking after my parents. Chokatsu think he looks like my dad, so he's always calling my dad big brother. And I don't know how many restaurants are like that.
Hmm.
Like when Sunrise shuts down. At the same time Sunrise almost shut down, Palace Saimin was on the verge of closing. And they're Okinawan-owned as well.
Oh, okay.
But their problem was during the pandemic, people didn't see Saimin as a takeout food and they kind of forgot about
Hmm.
Palace. And they didn't have social media as well. Their saving grace was that Mari Takeda, the editor of one of the editors of Honolulu Magazine, had called them about something else. And they told him, we have our closing plan in place now. And Mari sent out a bat signal and banged the drum to say, Palace Saimin is in trouble. The lines the following weeks were like down the road.
Oh, wow.
And I was talking to Mari about this because, you know, it just so happened that I was eating at Sunrise and it was empty on a Friday night. And so I asked Tomoko, how are you doing? This is not good, right? And she was saying, well, yeah, and we're behind on rent, but the landlord is okay. And I'm like, no, that's, they're not always going to be okay. And I told her, if you are in trouble, call me, and I think a week and a half later, she called me to say we're in trouble. They got behind on rent. There was a slump and people were not doing takeout or dining
Hmm.
out as much. And they had unexpected costs, like they had to repair certain things. So they were 3 months behind on rent and they had 15 days left. I think $13,300.
Hmm.
And, Chokatsu actually was kind of upset that Tomoko had asked me for help because like Palace, Saimin, Sunrise, they don't do that. They're not going to immediately do a crowdfunding and say, help us. It kind of bothered them. And that was one of the things I had to walk really carefully is I didn't want to force myself, say, no, let's do it. I had to make sure they were okay with it. And I also wanted to make sure it was up and up. So, everyone knew clearly all of the money is going to go straight to them. There's no questionable things going on. And seriously, first 24 hours, we got $15,000. And a good chunk of it weren't Okinawans. There was actually my friends who I kept dragging to Sunrise and they fell in love with as well. The next wave that came in was actually from Okinawa. It was, Chokatsu and Tomoko quietly, students from Okinawa studying at UH and KCC, they find their way to Sunrise, especially when they're homesick. And they tell them, when you're homesick, come here and we'll feed you. If they don't have a lot of money, they won't charge them sometimes, or they'll only charge them half. And they take care of them. And so a lot of the big donations that came in, like the $5,000, was from the parents of one of the students that they'd watched out for when she was at KCC.
Hmm.
And, then the final wave came from Hawaii Okinawans, which was amazing. And, I capped it at 71,000. Honestly, I wanted to hit 100, but Chokatsu was getting nervous about that. He kept trying to give the money away. And I had to tell him, it's like, one, if someone donated, don't give them free food. Just tell them thank you. From your heart, tell them thank you so much, but don't give them free food. And then when Hide-chan decided to retire, Chokatsu wanted to give him half of the money. And I was just like, you're going to make me a liar because people are donating it to keep Sunrise open.
Hmm.
And if Hide-chan needs money, then we will do a separate fundraiser. But, just that whole lack of, well, the generosity, right? And this always thinking of other people.
Hmm.
And that's why I I don't think Chokatsu and Tomoko realize how much what they do means to a lot of people in the community. And I think that helped them because it was really hard getting through the pandemic, you know?
I bet. Yeah, all those restaurants where they really just got screwed with the whole thing. I mean, so many people just went under, yeah, during that time period.
But the amazing thing when the HawaiiOkinawans.com list went up is people were going through the list. And, you know, we did it geographically. There was a volunteer that set up the structure of the site for me. And we set it up so there's a map feature. So you can look at your neighborhood or where you work. But people were going through the list and, you know, honestly trying to hit every single one that was
Yeah.
identified as Okinawan-owned or connected. But the thing that I started Okinawan Feastival, so kind of a play on Okinawan Festival, like a eating festival. And it was just this thing of, for 1 week, we're going to shine a spotlight. And we just asked people to do something, like some kind of special. And it's all based on what the restaurant can handle. So there's no cost to the restaurant. I donate my time because honestly, like you said, it was rough for them, right? And at that point, they needed the help. So the plan of it was, you know, I would work on publicity and they had to come up with, the onus was on them to come up with something that could draw people in, but within their means, right? And then we would work on trying to get people to go there and then maybe come back for their regular dishes and maybe be a regular. And, you know, Sunrise came up with a formula that works for them. So for Feastival, because there's only him in the kitchen with his son helping sometimes, they make 30 of 5 different soups, one off menu. So he'll make nakami special for Feastival because that's not on his regular menu. And he'll run it for the entire time. And
Wait, so what nakami?
You've never had nakami soup?
No, I never heard about. I never heard of nakami. What is nakami?
So nakami is a soup that it's a lot of times you'll have it at some kind of festive thing. So when I went to visit my village during Tsunahiki, we went to like about 6 different family houses. All of them brought out a bowl of nakami soup. So it's pig intestines, but it's also got, you know, like I think abura. It's all different things in it as well. But it's cleaned really well. So it's not like you're smelling anything like awful about it. So nakami is not a regular soup that was offered. Though Hide-chan did offer it regularly, now that I think about it. And, you know, there's this one lady, she was driving in from Mililani to pick up huge orders of soup during Feastival. And she was taking orders from all her family in Mililani. Then she was ordering extra stuff. And she got it. You know, she got the assignment where it was like, and it was just trying to explain to people, give suggestions. Don't just like order your dinner. Can you order dinner, lunch, dinner? Could you order one and then maybe give one away? Could you take orders from your family so that it goes farther? Could you consider buying a gift certificate, which was the best thing, I think. And, you know, Feastival's kind of like, so when Okinawan Festival was virtual, that's when I started timing it with Okinawan Feastival because people could buy food. And we would set up things so that it kind of went hand in hand. Now that festival is in person, I try and time it to happen after. So some of the bigger restaurants will have Okinawan meals during festival because, you know, we shut down at 5, right? So it's nice, but it runs for 2 weeks now and it's kind of shifted into from survival into celebration. So let's celebrate Okinawan food. And so again, we want people to know that Okinawan food is different from Japanese food. The ingredients are different, the taste is different. And we want people to know who is Okinawan-owned. But I also invite Okinawan at heart restaurants to participate. The rule for them is it must be local owned and they have to do something with an Okinawan dish or ingredient. And, the thing is, it's the Okinawan at heart ones that actually come up with the most creative
Mm-hmm.
dishes.
Yeah.
Kiaka, Chef Kiaka Lee from Kapahale. I mean, hush puppy andagi is amazing. And then he put crispy crab, corn, and shrimp in it with a barayaki sauce, dipping sauce. My favorite was his andagi, Ghee. So that was merging it with how Indians make donut by frying it. So he's frying andagi batter in ghee,
Ghee.
Indian style.
Yeah.
And I think that's amazing. Or, we had another place do like a hirayachi. So that's the Okinawan crepe. Lots of chives in it. They made a hirayachi burger, at their craft burger place. That was when Square Barrels was still open. Or you saw another place doing like rafte ravioli or taco rice hand roll. Another one did like a taco rice arancini. But for me, it's kind of like I just want it automatic that people know who is Okinawan or who is Okinawan friendly.
Yeah, you sent me to Zigu. We really liked
Ah,
yeah, that was good. They had the rafute and did a couple other things I think too. Yeah.
and what I really liked is Chef Tama really got into it. So the reason Zigu came in it was that their assistant or their manager is from Okinawa, Koza, and she's now the GM of Aloha Table. So because of that connection, Mariko got super excited about Feastival. Like she was, I don't know if you noticed, they had the Okinawan chopsticks, the red and yellow one that you see all over Okinawa.
No,
Mariko brought it in.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, those are all over Okinawa. So you take a glance at it and you're like, oh, those are Okinawan chopsticks, cool. But she just like they were making koregusu, even like mozuku tempura, and
Mhm.
like this year for Zigu, Chef Tama really got into researching. So he researched a lot about how is rafte made, but he
Mhm.
adapted it to his style. He's
Mhm.
French trained, so when he made the chinbin with the kokuto, he was infusing French techniques into
Uh,
how he made it. But even, making their own awamori chili pepper water and folding in awamori into the whipped cream. And, like Mariko's team over at Aloha Table, they did loco moco taco rice. So fusion
oh.
of loco moco with taco rice
Mhm.
or omu, right? Omu taco rice or having poke with umi buro, the Okinawan sea grapes.
Mhm.
So part of it is like ingredients, Okinawan ingredients, and also Okinawan dishes and techniques, right?
Yeah. So
To
Aloha Table, is that a restaurant?
yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
I've never
Zigu
been
and
there
Aloha
either.
Table are sister restaurants. So
Okay.
Zigu is supposed to be like a Japanese izakaya, but using not Hawaiian, Hawaii ingredients or Hawaii dishes. Aloha Table is Hawaii dishes with the Japanese. So it's like a Japanese take on loco moco. So
Mm.
instead of
Mhm.
gravy, it's demi-glace, fancier meat, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I know way too much about restaurants now than I thought it to know. And it makes it very hard to diet. But you asked about traditional day-to-day Okinawan food versus special event.
What? Actually, let's go back to like the Aloha. I mean, the Okinawan at Heart restaurant. So, like, how did you reach out to these restaurants and say like, can you folks do like a take on Okinawan food, or how did that come
A
about?
lot of them, I work at Kapiolani Community College and we have a culinary program. So a lot of the beginning ones were recommended by one of the chef instructors who's a good friend of mine
Mm-hmm.
because he saw it as a win-win because these were his students. So they were local owned, very small business, also struggling. So like Kiakali was the first one that came in and he's doing amazing things. So a lot of them are recommended by the chef instructors.
Oh, okay.
I'm a regular at Zigu. And so it was more just being friends with the management there
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of thing. And like I said, they don't pay me anything. My
Mm-hmm.
thing is like I just want them to be enthusiastic and want to be part of Feastival. And
Yeah.
there were some people like they just were not into it or and that's fine. It wasn't a fit, right?
Mhm.
I'm just going to focus on the ones that want to be there and just have fun, right?
Yeah, I mean that whole website. If people haven't checked it out, I don't know how I stumbled upon it, but yeah, I thought that was such a great resource. Just like knowing which is the Okinawan restaurants and which
And
restaurants.
actually,
Yeah,
there's a breakdown of who regularly provides andagi.
yeah, that too. Yeah.
Well, that I added because Honolulu Magazine asked me to do a roundup of my top 5 andagi regularly available on Oahu. That was more andagi than I ever want to eat in a short period of time. I was like, I wanted to honestly compare them, right? So I was eating them constantly for 2 weeks, and yeah, I was
Oh,
andagi out.
give me the breakdown on the ondagi then, because I don't know, like I don't think I've probably tried any of the ondagi places. Like, so what's the difference between all these different ondagi
So
places?
when I say regularly available, I mean like they have some kind of storefront, yeah. So very
Hmm.
different from Okinawan Festival. Well, like Utage does andagi on Fridays, and to me, theirs is the closest to sata andagi.
Hmm.
The kind of sata andagi is what you'll find in Okinawa. It's a little, the texture and the denseness of it is different. I don't really love the sata andagi in Okinawa because I grew up eating Hawaii andagi,
Hmm.
and there's some people that will say we should be calling it sata andagi, fried dough. But my thing is the recipe has changed so much in Hawaii. The texture, the taste, and even the denseness is very different. I think it's completely separate entities. So I think it's okay to call it Hawaii andagi. I
Hmm.
mean, in California they call it Okinawan dango, which I think is more egregious. To them, leave our Hawaii andagi alone. That'd be interesting to find out why the hell are they calling it Okinawan dango, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
But like Aloha Andagi, which pops up 1 week in a month at Marukai on Dillingham, that one, they're using all kinds of stuff like yogurt, 7 Up, different things. But she's got the recipe to a point where it's great, you know? And she started, I think, twice a year. They will offer an aloha dog, which is the hot dog on a stick dipped in andagi. By the way, if you make that at home, the andagi batter has to be a lot thinner. You can't just dip it straight in because it won't hold. And you got to dust the hot dog with something, like
Hmm.
cornstarch or flour, so it will adhere.
Hmm.
So, I mean, there's a lot of, and then you've got Teruya's andagi, which is a storefront. They probably have the most regular hours for andagi. His is very light and fluffy. So they're all very different. The most famous one, I think, is the andagi guy. His are really tiny because it fries up faster. He pops up at the parking lots in Don Quixote, like in town and somewhere else. And he goes to a lot of the bon dances.
Hmm.
So I find it fascinating that all the andagi is so different and that, like Teruya's also dusts it with sugar and cinnamon. Actually, the andagi guy does as well. But if you're back on Oahu,
Hmm.
once a year in December, Utage will make a gingerbread andagi.
Oh,
I
wow.
am there for that one because it's very ginger forward,
Yeah.
and I like it way better than pumpkin spice andagi.
Hmm.
Don't go there with that one. Go to gingerbread. But you're finding all of these variations on it, right? Where we have that. But I'm gonna adjust the site where the historic restaurants will be listed there as well. I just haven't had time because the spreadsheet has information that I don't want to publish. It's
Hmm.
personal or it's family information.
Hmm.
So it's a matter of how to maintain the full list and like a public list
Hmm.
of the information, and I just haven't had time to work on that.
Hmm.
And there are restaurants that are Okinawan owned, but my rule is somebody from the restaurant has to confirm with me that they are Okinawan and answer the questions, especially looking at their origin or whatever.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
there are a handful that have not made time to answer, so they're not on the list.
Hmm.
Because in the past, I've been told someone was Okinawan and they're not. And going back to respecting like the efforts that Howard put in to make sure things are correct. I'm trying to live up to the standard he set. And so I'm gonna stick to confirming everything, before it's published.
Yeah, going back to the oroku thing, did you see Micah Mizukami's he has something about the oroku, I guess, restaurateurs also, on his
Center for Oral History did a bunch of oral histories through Gene and Howard's project. Is that the
yeah.
one?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately, it was a little late. You didn't
hmm
have the original ones, but I'm glad they did it, right?
hmm
That they were able to capture some of the stories, yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, I think the other thing I wanted to talk about was the way that you talk about Okinawan food and how like some of the founders of Okinawan restaurants in Hawaii, they didn't want to do Okinawan food because that was the type of food that you could just do at home, you know.
Well, they also
And
thought it wouldn't sell. It wouldn't be sustained. It wouldn't
would
sustain
be
their restaurant.
yeah. And I think that's like the same similar mindset that a lot of these Filipino restaurants, have as well, So I was really surprised. I don't really see that in maybe not in maybe you probably know a little bit better on Oahu, but when we visit like Portland, Oregon, yeah, there's all these new like pop-up Filipino like high-end restaurants. And it's just surprising. It's nice too. That cuisine is like
And one
I
of
guess
those
yeah.
area restaurants came to Hawaii and didn't do well.
What was that?
One of the restaurants, I think from the Bay Area,
Uh-huh.
high-end Filipino came to Oahu.
And they didn't do well? Oh,
No,
really? It is not that's
because we have so many. We have
uh,
like Laverne's and stuff, and people just
uh,
saw it as too expensive.
that's too bad.
There's
Yeah.
one dish I want to talk to you about. So,
Huh?
and this I want to make sure I'm trying to spread this one. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's oxtail soup.
Mm-hmm.
So Kapiolani Coffee Shop they became super famous for their oxtail soup. And they made oxtail soup incredibly popular all over Hawaii. And it's because oxtail was cheap at the time. It's not cheap anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But this is not an Okinawan dish, but no oxtails in Okinawa. But it was an Okinawan-owned restaurant that made it very popular. And depending on the time or as it spread, there is a Hawaii Okinawan version of oxtail soup, which really focuses on the broth. So
Mm-hmm.
very collagen rich broth. You see ginger, you see more greens in it, and maybe less of the Chinese spices.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to talk about it because I've seen people review something like Campbell. So kind of confusing story, but the the owner of Kapiolani Coffee Shop decides to sell the restaurant and the recipe to a guy named Kayat. No, I forgot his name. Gary Mijo. Gary Mijo opens up a bunch of restaurants like Campbell, Asahi Grill. I forget the rest. But presumably they all have that recipe, right? And so you suddenly see it spreading across. So I've seen people review Campbell and say, oh, this no ma taste. Because if you are going in and expecting the Chinese version, which is
Mm-hmm.
very heavy on five spice or star anise and that kind of stuff, you're not going to like it.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's that thing of it's been influenced by the Okinawan
Mm-hmm.
presence. And maybe at some point I'm going to work with a food writer so that we can write an article on the history of it so
Uh-huh.
that at least people are educated about it and they don't have that knee-jerk reaction, right? Like, oh, junk, it's junk. And yeah, but it made me really mad when I read, this food reviewer talking about how it just tasted like oxtail water, and I don't know, but it could also be that they were expecting the Chinese spices, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, it's not, I don't think it's a legit review if that was the reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry. That was my soapbox.
So who does oxtail soup? I mean, which Okinawan restaurants do oxtail soup that you like?
Well, it's a special at Sunrise because oxtail is too expensive. A lot of them only Utage makes it. I'll be honest with you. I don't eat a lot of oxtail soup. my dad loves it. So a lot of times I'm just buying it for him. I'll eat some of the, and that's the thing is Frolic asked me to write reviews of the big 3 Okinawan restaurants because they wanted to introduce people to eating Okinawan food. But the first time I went to Hide-chan, I did not know how you eat pig feet soup because it's not something I grew up eating. I actually had to call Sanda Murata. I'm like, what am I supposed to be looking for? And he's telling me, because they bring this bowl, like this little dish of grated ginger. There's all this other stuff. I'm like, do I dump it all in? Do I dip? What's going on? And then he's telling me, oh, you got to crack the foot in half and you got to suck the collagen out in between it because that's the best part. And I'm just like, known to do that?
So you got to crack the foot in half and suck the collagen out.
Well, according to Sanda, that's the best part.
Okay.
And I was like, and that's actually why I feel like if you grow up with all this is no problem. But if you don't, how do you learn? And it's like that thing of like, I can enjoy pig feet soup, but without Sanda telling me, crack them open, suck them, it's like, I feel like you don't have the full experience, right?
You got to put a tutorial on your website about like, okay, this is how you eat pig's feet soup.
Well, actually, that's one of the future projects is how to be more Okinawan or how to be Okinawan.
Yeah.
So I do want to do like how to eat like an Okinawan and how to cook like an Okinawan.
That'll be useful.
I just want to eat with Sanda on pig feet soup. but that's the thing is like chokatsu doesn't have rafte on the regular menu. You have to special order it because I guess too many people were cutting the fat out, of the pork belly and leaving it behind. And that really bothered him. So now he does spare ribs, right? The soki. And that's another thing of saying, hey, this is good kind fat. They're, they're boiling it, they're draining it out 3 to 5 times and rendering out the fat. So it's not, fat. It's rendered fat. And that's partly, I always worry about participation and feeling like you are a part of the community. Because like I said, when I started, I had no idea what the Okinawan community was about. I started learning, hanging out at sunrise and just, visiting Okinawa and doing that kind of stuff. But I feel like I hear a lot of people telling me, I don't even know how to get started. And when I started going to Okinawan stuff, the absolute worst thing was I would always get dragged up to the stage to dance kachashi. And I didn't know how to dance kachashi. And being told it's easy, just do the, copy. And it's not for some of us who are not, dancers. And I asked one of the dance sensei, is there a class or something I can take and practice? And they're like, why would you need one? It's so easy, which made me feel worse. And the thing is, I had to learn because I knew people weren't going to stop dragging you up to the front, right? So you just give in. But for me, it just turned into a thing of breaking things down. How do you turn your wrist so that you can make the motion? And why aren't we teaching it that step by step so that we can enable people, right?
That's good. Yeah, it's going to have to be your next book.
Well,
yeah, how to be the Okinawan, how to be an Okinawan. Yeah.
Well, we're going to do a video series starting with how to dance like an Okinawan.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, because I think if we don't empower people to be able to do, like, even it's singing in with Asario Yunta, doing the Sayuyui or the Mataha, but also going back and explaining why are you doing, like, I was told a story about Kachashi that I love, which was, you can look at it as a competition or a battle between the musicians and the dancers. Because as long as people are dancing, the musicians have to keep playing. But the musicians can speed up the music to tire out the dancers. And I love the vision of it, because there was one time where Henry Isara wouldn't stop dancing and Sanna had to get on the mic and say, enough already, Henry, we tired. Go home. And I just see that, that side of it's not just this thing you do. It's like I love the idea of the battle, right? That you're doing this joyful thing, but you're also fighting with each other. But
Mm-hmm.
as these things are explained, I feel like we have to have that explanation in English.
Yeah.
I don't speak Japanese or Okinawan. I just know words. And it's not something I have the time to really get into. So I would like to create resources for people in English.
Where is that going to be in the future? Just are you going to have a separate
Um,
site for that, or like what are you going to do?
Probably HUA's YouTube.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, I did a class for the National Endowment of the Arts when I came to Hawaii, and we did Kachashi 101. So we're explaining to people Kachashi is actually the music, Achame is the dance, but let's spend 10 minutes just talking about your hands, like how do we turn it and that kind of thing. And the response was really amazing. And I want to do more of those things because not everyone is going to join a dance group or something like that. Not everyone has the resources to learn this stuff, at that basic level. And I feel like there's too many people that just feel intimidated and like they keep telling me they don't even know how to start. So I want to make sure that we can help them take that first step. And I really believe everyone finds their own path, whether
Mhm.
you like language, whether you like music, whether you like food, fabric, whatever. It's just setting it up so that we can get to that path, right?
So where do people find that kachashi instructional that you did? Is that on the HUOA website also?
That one isn't. The new one that we're going to take maybe in the next month
Hmm.
will be. The other one
Okay.
was national, it's called NEA Big Read.
Uh-huh.
And if you just do Kachashi or my name,
Okay.
it should show up.
Okay. I can find NEA Big Read, you said?
Hmm.
Okay.
If you can't, I'll send you the link.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Okay. So I guess you're going to go into the Okinawan foods. I guess how does Okinawan food in Hawaii differ from like I guess traditional Okinawan food?
Well, we can't get the ingredients. So, bitter melon, the Goya,
Yeah.
we get the light green variety. I think it's Chinese. It's very hard to get the dark green Okinawan variety
Hmm.
unless you grow it yourself at home. So, someone manages to get you the seed.
Hmm.
We really can't get the mozuku or asa seaweeds. So it's a little tough, I
Hmm.
think. I think food in Hawaii is and a lot of the dishes, like the carrot ninjin, or I'm sorry, carrot shiri shiri. Have you heard of that?
No.
I'm not saying shitty shitty. I'm saying shiri shiri, SHIR. That's kind of like it's an onomatopoeia of grating the carrot.
Okay.
It's a stir fried dish with egg, carrot, I think dashi, and it's something that people make at home.
It's like a champuru.
Kind of,
Yeah.
but no tofu, no,
Ah.
just the carrot, egg, and it's a very simple. My
Mm.
problem is the first time I tried it was Chef Roy Yamaguchi made it. That kind of set the bar high. I've been wanting to make it at home because it's not going to taste the same. Or even hirayachi. These are not dishes that are sold at any of the restaurants.
What?
So
Hirayachi.
hirayachi, it's like a crepe, Okinawan crepe that
Okay.
has
Yeah.
chives. And so, like that kind of thing is how are we going to learn about it, right?
Hmm.
Because that's something either at izakayas or cooked in the home.
Hmm.
And by the way, Okinawan taco rice, I'm seeing it way too much. Like a lot of Naichi Japanese restaurants are starting to add it into their menu. And
I've never even tried taco rice.
what?
I've never had it.
So, like in Okinawa, like in Hawaii, we like texture. So I'll see like maybe more tortilla chips or taco shells. Gosh, I heard talk that this guy was going to make a taco rice restaurant in Honolulu. So
Okinawan or not Okinawan?
yeah, he's Okinawan.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, like I think the Naichi taco rice is kind of like It's nice, pristine. So it's kind
Uh,
of like they make it kind of pretty. Like when you eat taco rice in Okinawa, it's very messy and hearty.
uh,
But like on Oahu, Ethel's Grill's taco rice is very American to me.
mhm.
Lots of white rice, the seasoned meat, then they'll put American cheese, like a layer of American cheese, and then salsa and stuff. And then you have Izakaya Naru, which is a Japanese owned izakaya, but they put their taco rice in a Korean hot stone bowl,
Oh, uh-huh.
which I thought would be weird because there's lettuce in there, right? That kind of cooks. But
Yeah.
I like it, you
Uh,
know? And then you've got like, but for me, I want texture. So I sneak in like Fritos or Doritos.
you bring your own.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, there was a guy who had a pizza, a wood fire pizza. He actually made a Okinawan taco rice pizza for us once for a
Oh,
Acer
wow.
festival, which was amazing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so taco rice has so many variations. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, Ukwanshin did a champuru workshop this past weekend. I didn't know that I guess Okinawans put corned beef hash in their champuru, you know?
That's U.S. military influence.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I was
they
gonna,
put
I
a
was,
lot of like canned tuna but it'd be interesting for someone to do research on Ryukyuan court cuisine
uh,
because they have this thing like buku buku cha. So apparently in the shuri area, the water is very hard, so they can actually beat sanpincha, so their jasmine tea, into a
hmm
froth, and so you're kind of eating and drinking. And then they have this dessert, like a sweet, that's made out of squash.
hmm
So you've got it's like a jelly, but then it's coated in sugar. It's very different. So
Oh, wow.
I'm lucky I have some friends that will drag me around and look for those kinds of things. But it's kind of that thing where everyone knows, certain food items,
hmm
but need to stay open to trying all the different things, right?
So what is like some of the, I guess, common traditional like Okinawan foods that we don't get really in Hawaii?
I think it's like everywhere they have access to jimami tofu, peanut
Oh,
tofu.
yeah. Yeah, 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 that's right. Yeah.
Here
hmm
izakaya naru will make, and then occasionally aloha tofu will make.
hmm
But like I said, it comes down to the ingredients, like
hmm
being able to get the different types. Like they have very different kinds of fish, lots of different kinds of seaweed,
hmm
and that kind of thing.
What is that tofu? I like that tofu, the one that has the awamori mixed into it. What
Oh,
what is that? What is that one called? What is that called? You know?
yeah, yeah. It's fermented
Yeah, I like that one.
tofu yo.
Oh, tofu yo. Hmm.
Yeah, that one you're supposed to just use a toothpick and eat it little by little. I think I was
Yeah.
with somebody who had no idea and he popped the whole thing in his mouth and regretted it for a very, very long time.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and even just like drinking awamori. I mean, how do people in Okinawa drink awamori? Like we went.
So there's this thing called chibugwa.
hmm
It's a very tiny cup.
hmm
And, Randy Kuba always says, like, with the chibugwa, it's not that you're getting drunk and drinking
hmm
copious amounts, but that you're interacting with people. And yeah, sorry, what were you saying about aomori?
Yeah, because I wasn't sure if we were drinking actually, because I've only been to Okinawa twice, and the last time I went was about a year ago. So I don't know if they were drinking aomori or if they were drinking like some kind of shochu or something. But people would fill up their glass with ice, and they would fill up half of the glass with like I thought it was aomori, and they fill up, yeah, and then the other
So
half,
to
the other half
me,
with just water.
there's young aomori, so
Uh,
not aged aomori.
hmm
And I kind of look at that like vodka, where you're putting lots of ice or you're
hmm
mixing other things in. But they have aged awamori.
hmm
And the aged awamori is to me more like scotch or whiskey.
hmm
Those have that really lovely flavor, the more complex, rich flavor that you can sip. There are like in Naha off of like 5 minutes off of Kokusaidori, there's a place called katakata chibukwa, and it's an awamori bar. So he has all the different awamoris from all the distilleries, and he's a master.
Oh,
And
wow.
you can start telling him, he'll give you samples, and he'll start telling, oh, you like dry, so you'll probably like these are the distilleries you probably like. And I think it's like anything, just educating yourself. But you know, if you could one day talk to Randy Kuba, he has been trying so hard to introduce awamori to the West, which has been kind of difficult, right? Because you have more people accepting sake, but not necessarily awamori.
But
And
who is Randy Kuba? Is he a restaurant owner or who?
no, he's a realtor.
Oh,
He's married to Francis Kuba, who's going to be next year's HUOA president, and he's a
okay.
past president. But he also brings in awamori, and he brings in all like the drinking vinegar, the Okinawan drinking vinegar manasu. So for him, it's just trying to share that part of the lifestyle. And I think his biggest clients are actually, like US military guys who started studying karate seriously in Okinawa, and they start their own school, like dojos within their school in the US. I think a lot of them sit awamori after practice, or that's their gathering time. But he said those are his most stable clients.
Okay.
So he has awamori made for him at a distillery in Okinawa. He brings it into Hawaii, and then it's conditioned with Hawaii sugarcane or other stuff like Kona coffee infused, so that he can adapt it to more American tastes, which is not as high alcohol content. But what I really like about Randy is he's trying to support the small distilleries in Okinawa, family owned, not the big corporation kind. Yeah, and then he can even bring in the kame, like the clay pots that can age awamori,
Oh,
which is
so
pretty.
what is he doing? Is he like selling it to like
He has a website,
other?
alohaawamori.com.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So actually, that's one of the reasons I will support Zigu, is because when I was talking to the management and said, hey, there's this local guy, it would be great if, I gave them samples, and they've supplied Aloha Aomori since then.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. They put their money where their mouth is.
Okay. Yeah, I guess is there any other projects that you're doing right now that you want to talk about?
I think a lot of it is just the storytelling. Next year is the 125th anniversary of Okinawan immigration to Hawaii. It kicks off January 8th when the first 26 men came over. I want to push two things. The first is for families to go through their stuff. Identify things related to Okinawans in Hawaii, the 125 years. What kind of writings are there? Are there letters, journals, essays? What kind of photos are there? Do we have any videos? And, want to create a form where we can have like just a inventory, kind of like, so we have an idea. And there's a lot of Hawaii Okinawan librarians out there, a surprising number. So I've kind of pulled them together, and, maybe we can create guides to say, hey, if you want to keep it, here's tips on storing it properly. Or the biggest thing is, if you're elderly, to let your heirs know what you want done with your stuff. Worst scenario is that it gets thrown away, or it gets taken by a collector and you see it on eBay. But, if there's a museum or an archive that wants to take it and preserve it, we can be a neutral source that can at least advise on options that you have, right? And I want clubs to do the same thing. I want clubs to go through their papers to see. So, I'm president of the Itoman Chijinkai. And so looking at 2 boxes, there's stuff in back of me that has some of the history of it. Maybe I can work with the Hawaiian collection over at Hamilton Library at UH to see if it can be added to their collection, but still available for people to use as research. I want that discussion to happen, right? And then the second one is actually working with Micah Mizukami, is share your stories. So I want people to take the time. I've never made time to sit down with my dad and my uncle, who are the only ones left, who have memories of great grandfather, grandfather and grandma about what it was like, their early life in Hawaii was like.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter what format you use. You're writing it down, you're doing an audio recording, you're doing a video recording. Just get it down somehow, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the ones where it's like, this is, I think, a treasure for each family.
Yeah.
Get it done before. But we also want to ask, are you willing to share any of these stories?
Mm-hmm.
And, the Discover Nikkei, which is part of the Japanese American National Museum, they're willing to publish the stories for us, form a partnership, which I think is a win-win because then we can. And the reason I want to do this is I'm hearing a thread of, why would anyone be interested in my family's stories? We're not important. Who decides who is important? I think that Hanaho magazine had the quote from Ronald Takaki, that scholar from Berkeley, which said, it's not the stories of presidents and kings that are crying out to be told.
Yeah.
It's the story of the common man, the farmers and the fishermen. Thousands and thousands of stories that make up this community of memory. And the thing is, I don't want anyone to think my story is not important. My family is not important. I think that, there was a guy named Akira Sakima. I got to confirm this, but I was told he would always tell people, you don't provide help when it's convenient. You provide help when it's needed. And I like it. I mean, I think it's a good reminder for all of us because I fall into that trap of, oh, I'm really busy, not a good time. Help when help is needed, not when it's convenient. And I feel like that generation had so much knowledge. I want people to know about Jimmy Iha, who was one of the elders in Wahiawa, who you knew had the best interests of the community at heart. He was always trying to develop young leaders. I would get phone calls from him all the time, trying to get me to join the leadership of Wahiawa Kyoyukai. And I would always tell him, Jimmy, I'm way overextended. But he would always end the conversation with, we're going to talk about this again. You knew at some point you would give in to Jimmy. But the thing is, these are the people that make up the fabric of 125 years of Okinawans in Hawaii, right? One of my distant relatives, Kamisuke Kakazu, he was the one who originally had the idea to send pigs to Okinawa. He would get together with people, they would dress up, meet at a park, and they would practice oratory, kind of like a old school Toastmasters, because they wanted to be better at communicating in English. They would always discuss current events because they wanted to improve themselves. And just the fact that they're doing this, I think, is amazing. You have the stories of all the restaurateurs, these amazing, amazing stories. And these are the ones that I feel like we need to capture. And, the reason behind it is I worked with a lot of the Nifē World War II soldiers, MIS, 100th, 442, PVV. And, the ones that were my mentors were Ted Tsukiyama and Bishop Yoshiaki Fujitani. And they talked a lot about the stuff they learned in Japanese language school when they were young. Maybe I'm butchering the pronunciation. Shushin. These were historic stories told of actual heroes that exemplified a value, for the Japanese, it's like gaman, it's like loyalty, perseverance. And they said when they were in war and in these impossible situations, that's what guided them in dealing with it. And they said that's what guided them in their daily life. And they asked me, what are the stories that guide you? And we have stories, but we don't have Okinawan stories. And that's why I think the Pigs from the Sea story is so critical to the Hawaii Okinawan community. You know that story, right?
Yeah.
Because it is an example of, you had all the different clan clubs. I don't know the number. I want to say near 100. They could never unite for whatever reason. But because Okinawa was under the control of the U.S. military, they didn't want to talk to all these little clubs. They wanted to talk to one entity that could represent all. And that's when they set aside their differences and created the Hawaii United Okinawa Relief Association, the precursor to HUOA. And that's why I remind people, the origin story of HUOA is really important. because it shows what we can accomplish when we set aside our differences and work together. And I think that from the war relief, and it wasn't just sending pigs, they sent over goats to provide milk for children. They insisted that the US military build a university because they were just going to make a trade school or vocational school. So it was Hawaii Okinawans that spearheaded the effort to build the University of the Ryukyus and raise money from around the world. You see the building of the Hawaii Okinawa Center. You see the creation of the Okinawan Feastival and the Hawaii Okinawa Plaza. I think these are extraordinary things. And I think it's one thing to think about is the divisions we create, to say, I'm in this school, you're not, so we don't work together.
I know that. I hear some of that. I don't understand that too. It's like, yeah.
It doesn't feel Okinawan to me, right? Yeah, and I'm hearing too, like some people say, you like contemporary, you don't like traditional. No, I deeply respect traditional, but I don't like it when traditional people try to put down contemporary efforts. To say there's only this way to do Asa. There's only this way to do Shishimai. I think that everyone finds their own path. Maybe what Johnny Tomura is doing with his Hoka, contemporary Shishimai, is the spark that's going to inspire a kid who joins him or a kid who's seeing him. Daichi Hirata is doing something similar in Okinawa, with contemporary or modern kumiodori. In ways that I think it's in like the 15th cycle of students that were inspired. And, there are stories, maybe they'll find their way to traditional, maybe they don't. But who are we to say what is right or wrong for an individual, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there just has to be that spark, right? Just like with the Hawaiian Renaissance, what is the spark for like the Okinawan community? I mean, particularly in Okinawa, right? Because we can talk and do things here, but I mean, how do you get that spark to happen in Okinawa? Yeah.
Well, what I do hope never happens in Hawaii is we turn it into a blood quantum, that 100% Okinawan is somehow superior to someone that is part or someone who has our heart. I hope we always have respect for that. Because I hear some people saying, well, I don't, I'm Okinawan, you're not, or that kind of thing. And that bothers me a little bit because I feel like one of the greatest strengths of the Hawaii Okinawans is we do embrace people that are interested, share our values, you share our heart. And some of the most influential or the best volunteers for projects, totally white, but they get it. They're doing it for the right reasons. So I think it's a wonderful strength. Yeah.
Yeah. The more people, the better, the stronger, everything will be, I think, so.
Or at least having us respect each other. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did a Asa drum festival at my college. And when I was at the centennial of the Brazil 100-year immigration celebration at their Okinawan festival, they had like over 100 drummers from RMD all over South America drumming together.
Wow.
The ground was shaking. I could feel the waves of the beat coming at me. And that was that moment where I was just blown away thinking, wow, these are my people. This is, the pride and this sense of this is who I am, my culture is, right? And I thought about it a lot. And it's like, how do you bring that feeling back to Hawaii? And I had asked some of the drum sensei, and one of them said, there's no way you can get everyone to work together. And,
I mean, I agree. I think, how do you bring it back to Hawaii? But how do you also just bring it back to Okinawa also? Just to get the Okinawan people to embrace, their heritage as well,
Well,
yeah.
The college offered me an 88-foot by 40-foot stage with a roof that they use for commencement. Because it was so expensive and big, they wanted to do a free community event the day after. So he said, do you want it? I'm like, hell yeah. And that's when I did the drum festival. And the rule for the groups participating is that we would start with traditional to contemporary to showcase the different styles of Asa. Because to me, the concern was letting people know Asa is not taiko, is not Japanese taiko. And I just told them the finale has to have everyone come together. So we picked Toshindoi. And so I had two Bon Dance Asa groups. I had Kenny Endo's Taiko Center of the Pacific, and I had two contemporary Asa groups. So down the row for 1 minute each, they did their style of drumming to Toshindoi. But once they reached the end, they all learned the same choreography so that they all could drum together at the end. And,
Yeah.
you know, Jane Kaneshiro, she's a koto sensei. I cried when she told me this. She came up afterwards to say she started crying because she said she felt like the young generation was stepping up and taking their place. But what made her cry was the respect she felt. Traditional Japanese taiko, Okinawan Asa, contemporary. That meant a lot. It was hard to do, but you know, like the first time all of the leaders met, you know, they were saying, hey, we'll go over to, I have a choreography for Mensore, which you're going to need for the Honolulu Festival Parade. I'll come and teach it to you. Another one told him, is like, hey, I have a shishi, a lion costume, but the head is broken. And another group told him, we'll help you fix it. That's what I always thought our community should be. You know, that we're helping. It's Yui Maru, that we support each other, right? And we haven't replicated. I mean, I did the festival for 4 years, and I did a special one at the end, but we haven't replicated anything. You know, like in the 125 years, wouldn't it be amazing if all the odori sensei and the dancers could get together in one big number?
Oh,
That
yeah.
Sunshin. It
That
takes
would
a
be
lot
great.
of work, though.
Yeah.
But that's the thing is I feel like we just stick in our little corners, and I don't know how we get past that. You know?
I mean, everybody basically wants the same thing, you know, just to perpetuate the culture, but there is just some barriers and some walls between the various groups, it seems, you know, so.
Well, I think, you know, realistically, we can't expect people to join groups or devote all their life to it, because the levels of investment or interests are different. But it would be cool if we could at least get people started on the path and let them see how far they go, yeah?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, thank you, Shari. I appreciate the conversation and everything. Is there anything you want to end with, or is there anything else you want to share? How can people find you, and how can, you know, people, I mean, I'll post the Hawaii Feastival websites. I'll post the other two interviews you did, you know, with the HUOA, and you did it with that other local
Oh,
person,
that was
right?
fun.
Yeah. That was a good interview too.
They can actually find me on Instagram and Facebook because I run
Okay.
the Okinawan Festival
Okay.
Instagram. And, you know, when it's not festival, I'm just posting things of interest.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate the conversation today. I appreciate all your restaurant recommendations. I appreciate all your insight into Okinawan food that I don't know and I haven't eaten. But yeah, you've been such a big help. Thank you.
Yeah. And, you know, you got to make sure go through the list and see how many you can go through on the Oahu list, yeah?
I know, especially since I didn't eat any of the ondagi at any of the places before. So next time I'm on Oahu, I have to check out the ondagi places.
I'm so spoiled. I'll only eat if it's hot and fresh.
Okay.
And then
I
you
don't
eat a
think.
lot.
Yeah, I don't think my kids are that picky, but they'll appreciate any of the ondagis. So, all right. Well, thanks again, and yeah, well, I'm sure we can have another conversation in the future. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Well, you know, like I said, next year will be the push to get people to share their stories.
Yeah,
It'd be cool to kind of encourage people to start doing that.
yeah, that's such a great idea. That just reminds me. I need to do that have those conversations just with my mom and dad and some of my aunties and things like
So
that.
we're gonna try and set guides.
Mm-hmm.
If you're writing, if audio, video, at least what's a format where it can go to an archive and that kind of. So we'll try and do that. But the main thing is just do it so that it's there, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, good. So at least maybe you'll be doing that with your family.
I'll definitely do it with my family. Yeah, no doubt.
And consider, like some that you might want to share.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So at least it becomes our tapestry, right?
All right. Sounds good. Well, enjoy your dinner. I'll put the kids to bed now. So. Okay. Good night, Shari. Okay. Bye-bye. If you loved today's episode, we'd greatly appreciate your support. Please consider making a small donation at donorbox.org/Luchu Nation. Your contribution helps us continue creating great content for you. Nifē, dēbiru.